One of the biggest changes for 2018 will be the types of tyre compounds available to the teams and drivers. So I've asked Loic Serra, the Chief Vehicle Dynamicist for the team, and the team's Chief Strategist, James Vowles, to come and help me talk through the tyre compound changes. Hello gentlemen, are you ready to talk tyres?
Absolutely.
Okay Loic, I will come to you first then. What changes can we expect?
There's quite a lot of changing happening in 2018. First thing is that Pirelli has added 2 extra compounds for 2018. We've got super hard tires, so color will be orange, and we've got hyper soft, color will be pink. On the color side, there's another tire that is changing color, which is the hard tire. It's now ice blue. Compound themselves will change slightly because they will all go one step softer, which that's going on the aggressive side, more grip for us this year. On the casing side, so 2018 dry tires have changed mainly on the front, and that's quite a significant step in terms of profile that we will have for 2018. That's about it for the dry tires, but for the wet tires, so we keep 2 extra wet compounds as we had last year, but on the Inter side, we've got an additional compound for Inter. So now 2 compounds of Inter instead of 1.
Wow, so lots of changes. Why have they made these changes?
I mean, the reality is, last year there were only 3 two-stop races. The remainder were fundamentally one-stops. Some were wet, some were interrupted by red flags, but that in concept was a one-stop race. And the problem with that is, with the low degradation, you didn't have a lot of what I consider racing, a lot of cars able to do different options tactically. Really, you were sort of cornered a little bit on where you could go. The reasons behind that are fairly straightforward. Pirelli had to build a tyre for 2017 that was robust to what was one of the most significant aerodynamic changes we've ever gone through. We added performance to the car, and they didn't know how much, and more importantly, what the effects were going to be. You simply can't replicate those loads. So they had to produce a tyre that was going to be very robust to those, operating into a wide window. They accomplished that goal. Really what they're trying to create now is better racing, more tactical options, more ability for 2 stops really to come to the forefront, and a range of compounds that suit more circuits.
So then how useful was that after-season test in Abu Dhabi for you?
Extremely. I mean, it was the test to be at, certainly, to understand where you're going to be. Those are the tyres that we were going to be facing in 2018. And unlike where we were in 2016 transitioning to 2017, where we did a sort of similar test at the end of the year, or a number of mule car runners did, now you've actually got a car that's somewhat closer to the loads that you'll be seeing next year. So for us, it was a huge revelation and an understanding of really what we will be facing in the following year. I mean, just leading on from what Loic said before, it's almost at the point now with Formula One that from the point where we hit the ground running in Melbourne with last year's car, you're already thinking about next year's car, where you're going on tyres, etc. That's the sort of development cycle you're now in.
So with all the data and the understanding you took from the Abu Dhabi test, how have you approached the selection process for 2018? And talk us through that process a little bit.
It's something, so what Pirelli do is we have to select tyres 8 weeks before a European race, 14 weeks before what they consider to be a flyaway race. And to put that in context, for Melbourne, on the 14th of December, we selected the tyres.
And that was just fresh out of the Abu Dhabi test.
Absolutely, and that's the point. With really what is very little information, you don't know really what the tyres are going to do in Melbourne. And in fact, by the 4th of January, we've selected the first 3 races worth of tyres. We haven't done any testing on the new car. The new car doesn't exist. It's bits of carbon fibre on the ground. And we're already selecting what tyres we're going to have. The way it works is we have 13 tyres available 13 sets available across the weekend. Pirelli will choose 3 of those for us. One will be the qualifying tyre, so the softest one in the range that they want to bring. They'll select 3 different compounds they want to bring to that particular event. The other 2 will be what they consider to be the mandatory tyres, the tyres, at least one of which you have to run in the race at some point. And remember, the other regulation is we must run 2 different compounds of dry tyre in the race. So now you're bound by that, you have an understanding. So we're going to select 10 tyres. And the way it works with us is we have a working group that consists of Loic, myself, and a number of others. And we sit down and go through what we believe to be a correct selection to cover all eventualities. Because remember, just because the weather happens to be that when we arrive there, we're actually trying to predict what weather conditions may occur several weeks in advance. So you have to cover a wider range of what you just see normally.
So that Any surprises? Anything you weren't expecting for the first few races that you've selected so far?
The small intrigue that Pirelli did for us is very typically when they've bought 3 compounds, they've bought compounds that are all in line with each other. So in other words, they're sequential. So perhaps you've had a soft, medium and a hard. That would be a selection. What Pirelli have done this year is already for the first time for one of the events, they've bought a double step. So we've got a little bit of a break between the compounds, something Pirelli haven't done before, and it might create some very interesting strategic elements for teams.
So do you think we'll see that happening more during the season once you've given feedback?
I certainly feel that, again, Pirelli's goal is to make racing better, increase the number of stops. And to that end goal, they will do what they have to in terms of tyre selections. And one tool in their arsenal is definitely skipping compound steps, and I don't see why they wouldn't use it at a later stage in the season as well.
That's one of the tools they have. The other tool they will play this year, they've got the Hypersoft, which is a big step in terms of stiffness compared to what we've seen on the until now. So that's a quality tyre in a way. So it's not jumping a step in stiffness, but it's actually the way it's made is hyper aggressive.
Okay, so how's this going to affect you from a strategy point of view then, James?
The first thing is strategy is predominantly understanding of tyres. So it's a relationship Loic and I have forged a long time ago. You have to have a very close working relationship. So what Loic understands on the tyres immediately affects what you're going to do strategically. What it will do straight away is actually it's opened up options. So whereas last year you predominantly, as I said, had one stops really coming out at the forefront tactically, now we are seeing a lot more creep of multiple stop strategies coming in. And more so you're seeing a split between the front, the midfield and the back of the grid. A number of different options appearing. The tyres are softer, which means last year there was a number of occasions where cars, us included, struggled to get really that tyre working. I think you'll see that problem occurring less this year, which means a lot more cars able to use more compounds as well. Good for the sport, good for racing, good for us. Other elements of this is the drivers are going to have to adapt a bit more, and this is really more predominantly into Loic's area. But the facts are, as we go into Barcelona testing, the car is nearly a new entity. Really for the purpose of this conversation, it's entirely new. So they've got to learn that. But the tyres, as Loic's already said, there is a significant construction change on them, and they are very different stiffness levels. They have to learn those as well. So any driving tactics they learnt last year in management, really they've got to start from scratch in that and rebuild their experience.
So you mentioned a little bit about what we're going to expect in racing, and what can the fans look forward to? We're going to see more overtakes, potentially?
What you'll get now, definitely, is now that you're going to see more degradation, more drop in lap time because you're using the tyre. And that will happen. These tyres are soft. As Loic said, the Hypersoft. Lewis came in after running it and said, wow, that's a quality tyre, that's fantastic.
Yeah, best they've ever made, he even went as far as to say.
Absolutely. and that's what you're going to see. These tyres are softer. Softer is more degradation, more lap time drop, more stops required. But what it also means is last year, when you caught another competitor, invariably they wouldn't have a huge amount of lap time drop from the tyres, which means in the areas where you need to overtake the braking zones and the traction to get out the corner, there wasn't a big enough differentiator between the teams. In 2018, we will have more differentiators and it will generate more overtakes. And that is just a sort of, I guess, a technical preempt to it. The question is how much, and the reality is Loic says we don't know at this point in time. Remember, we've chosen tyres without really knowing much based on where we are, and until we get to Melbourne and start running, we won't truly know what the effect will be. My personal opinion is you will see more pit stops than last year, you will see a little bit more overtaking than last year, and you will see cars dropping a lot of performance, trying to hang on to a tyre that maybe they shouldn't have done.
So a bit more action. And what about lap records? Will they fall away again this year like we saw in 2017?
They will.
By how much?
Significantly, clearly more than 1 second.
Well, thank you both very much for coming to talk about tyres with me, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.